Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM. I am happy to welcome our second session presenters. And many of you know them because they've been in the work for quite a while. So Dr. Christine Tennyson, ESL teacher at Riverdale and adjunct professor at Trevecca. Miss Emily C. Davis, secondary ESL facilitator, Rutherford County Schools. And Andrew Rainey, EL educator, Rutherford County Schools. So this is a team of educators who work with older students and know them well. And so we've got a theme going this morning on scaffolds. This is good. So you're going to hear another perspective. Dr. Tennyson and Ms. Davis, Mr. Rainey, thanks so much for being here today. So you may have the floor.
Okay, who we are. We are educators. I just wanted to introduce us because I'm going to tell you, after 20 plus years in the business, I am in the waning part of my career. I look out and I'm going to say a few of us are potentially as well. And the best part about that is working with young people, because we can pass on the torch to these amazing young people who have come along and taught me a lot. Andrew and I work together at Riverdale, and you know, when you find that coworker that is smarter than you are and you have to go, oh wait, can I keep up with him? He's going to be embarrassed by that, but I'm going to tell you it's true. And then when you start working with somebody who you knew as a small child, because her mom and I used to do Bible school together, and so then, you know, it's that thing, guys, y'all get it. Here's the best part about this. In this presentation, which Emily's going to go over in a few minutes what we're going to do, it's going to connect with what you all are going to be expected to do with these new crosswalks, because, you know, it's going to be us selling that crosswalk to the grade level teacher. It may come down from the principal, but we have to sell the why, okay? And so we're going to give you some things to sell the why, and then it's also going to give you some opportunities to think about your own practice, hopefully, so that you can better understand what our role is as we become. Every ESL teacher is a facilitator, right? We don't just teach. I don't care if you've been in it for 20 years or 5 years. You understand your role is an advocate for your students. And so we're going to hopefully give you some ways to advocate.
All right, so today in this session, we're going to go over 3 different things. The first thing that we're going to do is discuss how to create school-wide buy-in for serving English learners. Then Andrew's going to go over some fast strategies, kind of taking what we learned from the morning session and kind of applying those strategies and giving you real content area examples of what that looks like. And then Dr. Tennyson is going to take us deeper into this, giving more well-rounded examples of this idea of scaffolding for content area teachers. So in terms of what comes first, I kind of want to give you a little bit of context about the role that I'm in now. I taught high school ESL for 8 years at a large school, a large EL population school in Rutherford County. I taught sheltered U.S. history, sheltered English 4. I pushed into classes. And so a lot of the things that I'm going to discuss today, I just want to give you some context because they have been applied at a school that has experienced rapid growth over the last decade, okay? So with that said, I do want to mention my first year of teaching was in the 2014-2015 school year. I was an itinerant teacher, so I went between two schools, one of which was Riverdale High School. I started my mornings there, and I had 9 direct serve English learners. And then after my morning was finished, then I would travel to another school in the county where I had 18 English learners. I was the only ESL teacher at both of those schools. As a 23-year-old, that came with a lot of challenges. However, when I compare the numbers to this year, what was the number? 114 direct serve at Riverdale High School. So we did the math really quickly this morning, and that's a 92% growth rate. And so Rutherford County has experienced a ton of growth in the last 9 years. And something that I'm super excited about is that I'm a high school ESL facilitator for Rutherford County, so I get to go around to different schools and help teachers build their confidence and capacities for serving English learners. And I feel like there's a shift occurring in our county and in Tennessee in general. The shift from maybe when I first came into Rutherford County, kind of the model was that general education teachers, or I might say mainstream teachers throughout this session interchangeably, but content area teachers might have had 1 or 2 English learners throughout the day, and if they needed help, what would they do? If the English learner needed help, what would they do? Here's the work, go to the ESL teacher, right? But with 92% growth that Riverdale alone is experiencing, and with the growth all throughout Rutherford County and throughout Tennessee, I find that the EL teacher can no longer take that role, right? There's going to be a shift in responsibility. And so as an English learner, instructor, teacher, as Dr. Tennyson said, our role is much more than the teacher. It's an advocate, right? And now I find that we have the distinct honor to train those in our school building about how to serve those English learners. So today I'm going to discuss some ways to build that school-wide buy-in at the school level. These are things that I implemented in my time at Smyrna High School, and we are implementing some of these things at the district level now that I work for Rutherford County. So, with that said, we have, there are some really cool distinctions. We learned from the morning session that some really great scaffolding techniques, okay? And so I'm going to apply, as an ESL advocate in my school, I'm going to apply some of these strategies with my content area teachers. Okay? So some of the things that were mentioned earlier is that in order to scaffold correctly, you need to activate prior knowledge, right? So this is a great way to start with your content area teachers, is build on what they already know, right? They already know great classroom instruction. We've just got to build in a few other supports so that they can be confident in serving our English learners, instead of maybe the typical response of, here's the work, go to the ESL teacher for help, right? So activating their prior knowledge, building on what they already know, and then building motivation around that. And that's this idea of buy-in, right? This school-wide buy-in is genuinely building motivation for serving English learners. So with that said, what was another? We said activating prior knowledge, building motivation, and then something that was mentioned earlier in the morning that I really loved was see the good things that your teachers are doing and call them out in a good way, right? And encourage them. I find that, has anyone ever read the book Atomic Habits? Yeah? Show of hands. If not, this is a shameless plug for Atomic Habits, but part of Atomic Habits discusses this idea of identity and how if we want to create this a new habit, then we have to adopt the identity of the habit that we want. For example, If I want to start running, I want to build that habit of running, I am going to identify myself as a runner, right? I might be tempted to say, I've got to go run today. I don't know how to run. I don't know. I'm not a runner, but I've got to go do the couch to 5K, right? There's this idea that if you can incorporate that into your identity, then you'll be more motivated to do it, right? So if I say, oh, I've got to run, I'm a runner, I've got to run 5 miles today, I'm going to adopt that. That's going to get integrated into my personality and therefore kind of reinforcing this habit, right? So my idea is we need to kind of bolster this type of identity in our content area teachers, right? And so kind of building, yes, I am not only a teacher, a content area expert, but I'm also a language teacher. I'm also I also serve my English learners, and I'm really good at it. And I find that if we can apply some of these scaffolding techniques to our content area teachers, then that can kind of build that into their identity, okay? So the 3 things that I have implemented, or 3 things that might be good in terms of creating this school-wide buy-in, is to inform faculty in small chunks. We all know that a teacher's plate is very, very full, right? And if we overload them with, here are all of the supports that you need to give, here are all the sentence stems that you need to incorporate, that there's not going to be a lot of buy-in. They're going to say, that's just another thing, right? So if we can inform our faculties in small chunks, that might help in creating this identity for serving English learners. Another strategy is to advocate for representation and leadership. I find that if you have a seat at the table as an English ESL teacher, an English learner teacher, that makes all the difference. I think, so here I have advocate for ESL representation in PLCs and leadership teams. I found that some of my PLCs, specifically the English 1 PLCs that I was a part of and advocate for, they kind of got used to seeing me in their meetings. Or me saying, oh, maybe they didn't see as much success on their common formative assessment because this question is extremely biased, culturally biased, right? So just having, I like to see it as screen time, right? If we can just introduce and incorporate more screen time for serving English learners, then I find that the school-wide identity or buy-in of serving English learners can improve. The third one is to give a teacher a scaffold. He supports an English learner for a day. Teach a teacher to scaffold. He supports an English learner for a lifetime, right? And that's going to be a great segue into Andrew's segment of the presentation because he's going to give you hands-on examples of how to do that. All right, so in terms of informing faculties in small chunks, there are 3 things that I started with when I was the instruction chair or the chair of instruction at Smyrna High School. One, I thought about the form of communication that I have with my teachers. I'm probably not going to be able to make face-to-face conversation with many of the teachers, but something that I can do at the high school level is send out emails. As a chronic non-checker of emails, I know that is not always the easiest, but what I do find is if I can type in a keyword or important ESL information or pin the ESL email at the top, then that is I can refer back to it often, right? So I'm going to give you some examples of this. So first is email considerations. The next are having ESL or ELL spotlights. And this is, I'll show you some examples of what that looks like. And then the last one is incorporating professional development for your faculties. All right. So in terms of email considerations, some of this is high school specific. I don't know, I don't think that elementary school has midterms and finals, so you can kind of apply what is applicable to you. But these are some really great points, access points, if you will, for our teachers. Of course, the beginning of the year, giving kind of a summary of what to expect throughout the school year and all of the different topics that are associated with general EL information. I have an email listed here about getting involved in those general education PLCs. I might want to send out an email midway through to remind teachers of monitoring, what they need, what are the requirements for monitoring. I have listed here midterms. Of course, our Super Bowl WIDA access testing. That's going to be an important access point for our teachers, is providing information about that. And then, of course, I have finals. I should have listed here end of course testing as well, or TCAP testing, because those are important areas that kind of impact our English learners. The second, in informing our faculties in small chunks that I have here, is incorporating some sort of EL spotlight. This is a monthly newsletter that I send out, or I sent out to my faculty every month, kind of outlining some different topics within the world of English learners. So I would send out this ESL spotlight regarding cognates, and then I'd have a list or an extra PDF of the cognates from English to Spanish. And then that's actually things that a mainstream teacher can use in their classroom. I find that these sometimes get the message across better than a professional development, right? It's like, okay, give me something I can actually use in small chunks. It's not overwhelming. This is great, okay? So I find that monthly spotlights kind of build that buy-in. And then I have professional development. Offering new teacher sessions and professional development sessions for our mainstream teachers is incredibly important. I don't know what your county is facing, but I think nationwide, we're having a teacher shortage, right? And so one of the things that we need to consider is that we might have some more job-embedded teachers, or teachers getting their licensure while teaching. So these are teachers who have not been able to go through a teacher education program. So their level of support might be a little bit more hands-on. So anticipating that the supports that your teachers might need and incorporating that into professional development. At Smyrna High School, at the beginning of the year, we always give a cultural awareness professional development where we discuss the demographics that are represented in our schools. For example, in the early, I would say 2010 to 2012, we had a big influx of a very specific population, the Karen population. Their level of support and needs looked very different than what the level of support that our students from Central America or South America might need. And so to see the shift, the cultural shift, occur over the last decade, or the last decade and a half, you can kind of present to your faculty kind of the shifts that are occurring within their classrooms, right? And so right now we're seeing a big shift between our students from Central America to our students from South America. And we know that their demographic, or their language backgrounds look different. Therefore, their supports need to look different. Their scaffolds need to look different. In terms of an overview, this is something that I always like to do at the beginning of the year as well. In terms of small chunks, I like to kind of go over some hot terms to know within the English learner world. I also like to teach teachers how to identify their students. And then I also like to give a very light overview over the proficiency levels and what that means, right? So in terms of teaching teachers how to identify students, in Rutherford County, we use the Elevation platform. Does anyone else use the Elevation platform? Oh, I love it. It's been like a Christmas gift to me. It has all of this wealth of information. And so breaking down the information and showing teachers actually how to access this wonderful tool, it might seem, okay, I sent out the link, they need to register, it's kind of intuitive, they can do it. No, what I've found and what I've seen at Riverdale as well is that, no, breaking it down and showing them exactly how to access it, and then showing them how to use the information that is offered, right? So being very specific. Now, I am applying scaffolding to my content area teachers, yes? On this slide, do you see any words? No, do you see, well, you might see some words, but do you see any instructions? No, but you see some red boxes that kind of lend or encourage your eyes in certain directions. Kind of the important spots to mark for your teachers. I find that if we can limit the amount of information that we give our teachers, then they're going to be able to utilize the information a little bit better. And then like I mentioned, I give a brief overview of the proficiency levels, and they can utilize this to interpret the can-do descriptors, the goals, the classroom accommodations. If we can teach them how to interpret the proficiency levels, then they can utilize the tools so much better. Number 2 is advocating for ESL representation in PLCs and leadership team. At the beginning of the school year at Smyrna, I would send out this email, and it says that we had 2 goals this school year. The first goal is to offer more support to our mainstream teachers regarding strategies and accommodations for your specific content area, and then to advocate for our students and their needs. Those are the 2 major goals. And so what this kind of initiative put out is that based on my ESL team, we would assign an ESL representative to each of the mainstream PLCs. Now, with programs that are still small, you might not have the personnel to kind of spread out. But once again, we're trying to get more screen time, right? We're trying to spotlight our students and their needs. Okay, so I find that letting the content area teachers see your face in terms of their PLCs, your impact might be a little bit greater than a faculty meeting, although that's important too, right? In terms of the last one, give a teacher a scaffold. He'll support an English learner for a day. Teach a teacher how to scaffold. He supports an English learner for a lifetime. We would have scaffolding workshops where teachers would bring in specific assignments, and the ESL team would give guidance on how to take that actual assignment that you have and what are going to be the potential challenges for our students and what supports are going to be appropriate. So I find that offering scaffolding workshops has been super helpful instead of just saying, give a sentence stem, right? Actually working with the teacher, and then they can leave with something they can actually utilize the next day, right? So for example, I have here, I believe this was a scaffold for the 7th man. The 7th man in English 1, they discuss survival, this unit of survival. And the 7th man is a frame story, so it tells a story within a story, and it jumps from present to past. That's going to be difficult for an English learner, right? They might not have mastered the verb tenses, they might not be able to visualize the different things, but providing extra guidance for our content area teachers on how to scaffold for those students, I think that is going to make the most impact. Go ahead, Andrew.
Hello. As Dr. Tennyson said, I'm Andrew Rainey. I work at Riverdale High School. That's the only school I've ever taught at. I will admit that weakness in myself, because some of you are looking going, oh gosh, elementary, isn't this going to apply to me? That's how we feel most of the time, so I hope it does. I hope it does. We'll do our best here. No, but I'm really thankful to be able to be here again. I love the collaborative. I love meeting new faces, seeing so many new faces and faces that I've seen here for years, which is great. I'm going to talk to you today about some fast strategies you can implement with your teachers and some background for this. Dr. Tennyson asked me to speak to this. I, every year, do a session with our new to Riverdale teachers, so not necessarily first-year teachers, but teachers who are new to our school, new to high school, new to our district, and give them some of our fast strategies, these fast scaffolds. This is going to seem antithetical to what Emily was saying in her last point, and I promise this is intentional. She talked about teaching teachers to scaffold versus giving them the scaffolds. What I'm going to share with you are some of the ways that we at Riverdale and we in Rutherford County kind of help our new teachers hit the ground running and give them some tools in their back pocket they can pull out from their teacher toolbox. Is that an elementary thing? Did I do it? All right, cool. Pull out of their teacher toolbox for their classrooms. So these come from new teacher sessions and professional development sessions. Our content teachers want easy to implement accommodations. Like Emily said, a lot of our teachers, especially in high school, are coming from transitional licensure programs and coming from EPP programs, and they need to hit the ground running and be able to serve our students in the moment, correct? Yeah? All right. So I always start these sessions with EL basics. As Emily talked about, we talk about jargon. We establish a shared lexicon for some kind of session or shared information. We also talk about ILPs. I do something similar to what Emily was showing where we share where the ILP is and we talk about how you can find the language levels and all those things. We also talk about accommodations for ILPs versus IEPs and 504s when I do these sessions, and I feel like that's something that's very important. We get a lot of teachers who look at ILP accommodations and they go, oh my God, I have to do all of that? I'm like, no, sweetie, this is a little different than an IEP. You know, these are scaffolds, these are recommendations that are meant to be removed. They're different than IEP accommodations, and we kind of explain that difference to them. I talk real fast, and I like to check in, so if y'all are still with me, say yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm not a lecture teacher. This is hard for me to talk for 20 minutes, so y'all gonna have to talk back with me. Sound good? All right, cool. These are accommodations I always talk about in these sessions. Some of them I go into more depth than others. And I would like to point out that these are not all of the accommodations that we have options for in our ILPs. These are just the ones that we give to a lot of our students. And as was brought up super well earlier, a lot of these are give to, do for, correct? Something we do at Riverdale, and we're starting to do more in Rutherford County, is giving our students a voice in their accommodations that they're using and holding them accountable to maybe taking advantage of those in some ways, right? So having student collaboration. We at Riverdale, we collaborate with our students every quarter on their ILP accommodations, and we assess what's working for them and what's not. So I'm putting that caveat on all this to say that these are fast accommodations we're giving teachers. Say cool? Awesome. You can look through this list. These are ones that most of us are familiar with if we're EL educators, such as extended time, providing students a bilingual dictionary or other bilingual resources as necessary, giving notes or study guide with answers or highlighted sections, shortening assignments, modeling language and task completion. Oh, I love a good model. I love a good model. Monitoring rate of speech, the opposite of what I'm doing right now. Say yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scaffolding responses for our students, highlighting key information, and supporting essential content vocabulary. I'm going to talk about these bottom three right here and kind of show you how I show those to our teachers. Sound good? Yeah. Give me a thumbs up. Awesome. Oh, y'all are fun. All right. So this is a question that when I used to co-teach or do push-in for U.S. history when I was a new teacher, this is a question from a U.S. history assessment. They gave the student like 30 multiple choice EOC or TN Ready style questions, and then they had constructed responses at the end. It was just this. It was just this. And it was half their grade. And I, as a first-year teacher, was like, that feels, all right. So someone read that question for me nice and loud.
Do you agree with President Truman's decision to drop an atomic bomb on Japan? Give at least 2 facts to support your opinion.
Okay, thank you. So we learned about the atomic bomb use in what war was that? Anybody? Yeah, we learned things. Awesome. So I would write a sentence starter for this. This is a sentence frame for this question, right? This is something I might give a level 3 student or a level 2 student, right? I agree or disagree with President Truman's decision to drop an atomic bomb in Japan because, I also think this because. We are all familiar with sentence starters and sentence frames in this room as EL educators, yes? What I'm showing you here is how I would model this for a classroom teacher, right? A key thing to note here is that I'm giving them a question from their content area. I have seen, I've had content teachers who are from other schools come to this presentation at our school because they're new and they go, well, when someone did that before, they never gave me examples. And that blows my mind. That blows my mind, folks, that we're not giving them examples from their content and ways to connect it to their content and their content standards, right? I would give the teachers, these are ones I did the last time I did this session. Here's one about the Hunger Games, because that is, I think, an alternate text for English 1. I don't remember. And then I talked about explaining the steps of the water cycle. That's not a high school standard. I just threw that in there, but here we are. So in a session, I would have teachers write out sentence starters and sentence frames for me. Seems kind of fun. Do we need to do that today? Okay, good. We're going to move on. This is the part that I want to draw your attention to the most about this scaffold. When you're teaching teachers about sentence starters and sentence frames, you want to draw your attention to the fact that obviously scaffolds are meant to be what? Removed. They are not forever. Like Sarah was saying earlier, they are built up to be pulled away, right? Scaffolds are not one size fits all. Again, as Sarah was saying earlier, these are individualized for our students based on their needs and based on what? The content needs, yes, and data, right? We do these on data. We also want to be careful with repetitive language. Something I see a lot of teachers do when you teach them these fast strategies, like you teach them a sentence starter, they'll use that same starter for everything. Anyone have a content teacher that does that? No offense. That's what we've taught them how to do, and so that's what they do, right? We have to show them how to do a different sentence frame or sentence starter with different language, right? Instead of saying, I think, say, my opinion is, or my opinion is this because, right? We're giving them different words. That also helps our learners because they're seeing synonyms, right? Get them comfortable with one, change up one of the verbs, change up one of the adjectives in the frame, yeah? Play around with sentence starters versus sentence frames. Teachers to play around with word bank of transition words. Something I get when we do conferencing with our students about their accommodations, and I tell them, I don't think you need that frame anymore. I think you might need just a starter. They're like, hey, but what if I don't? Okay, well let's let your teacher give you a word bank. Let's let your teacher give you a word bank with some of that academic vocabulary from the unit, right? So teach your teachers how to play around with this kind of stuff. Don't just give it to them cut and paste, and then they're going to do it like that every time. You know what I'm saying? If you're still with me, say yes. All right, good. The next one I want to point out to you is highlighting key information. Again, this is a text from U.S. history. This is a question that the student who had to look at this text had to figure out. The question says, what happened to farmers after World War I ended? And Emily put a cute little picture of a farmer in there for us. Thank you, Emily. If you're an English learner, and this is the text you get, this was 3 pages, by the way. This is just 1 page of a 3-page text they had 12 questions with. Would you know where to look? No. All right, so what have we done for the student in this situation? We've annotated. I heard annotated. Ooh, snaps for annotated.
We've decreased the cognitive load needed to read the whole text. They don't have to read the whole thing.
Yes. We're focusing on a certain section, so we're decreasing the cognitive load and making it easier for the student to digest the section they need to do what? Answer the question. Because if the teacher's asking that question, that means that is a part of their standard, right? That's a part of their content that they need to make sure the student understands from this assignment, yeah? So in this sentence, I've underlined like a one sentence where the answer is, right? Can you read that from that far away? Is it big enough? Yeah, that's okay.
You have a copy of this if you went to the website. I think we gave a copy of everything, and it's on the website, all of our resources.
Absolutely. So you can take a look at this later. Normally, I would have teachers try to answer the question using the sentence starter, or using the highlighted information. We're going to keep moving. Can I move on? Say cool? Cool, all right. This is a text from biology, and I would take the teachers through and model like, okay, what sections could we highlight for the student? What keywords could we put a box around? What can we draw the student's attention to? So here are some samples of questions from an actual assignment, from an actual biology teacher's classroom, and then an actual text that they used. Do you see a trend here? Am I making up stuff for my classroom for this? No, I'm giving them their content resources that content teachers use, right? All right, some things to remember when you are teaching teachers how to highlight key information. As always, scaffolds are meant to be, and scaffolds are not. Yeah, you're still awake, good. I know it's close to lunch, we're gonna get there. And then be careful not to encourage direct copying. A lot of times what I see teachers do when they highlight key information for students is students use that information to construct a response and they copy paste the sentence that the teacher highlighted, and then they write it right below with the sentence frame. Has anyone else seen that before? Yeah, and we may accept that for a level 1 student or a level 2 student, but are we going to accept that for a level 4 student? No, we are not, friends and folks. We're not doing it. Things to teach your teachers to play around with, the lengths of the excerpts identified. So every time I teach this or I show this strategy, I get my EOC teachers, because in high school not everyone's tested, I get my EOC teachers going, they can't have that on the EOC, and I'm like, you are correct. You're absolutely correct. So how do we remove the scaffold over the course of the year, right? Teach us how to play around with, instead of identifying the sentence, maybe put a box around this paragraph and say, numbers 1 and 2 were in this paragraph. Number 3 is in this paragraph, right? Methods of highlighting. Some people prefer to underline. Some people like to put a box or highlight just a keyword that's a keyword from the question. Yeah? There's lots of different things to play with here, right? How specific your identifiers are in your questions, and then providing more highlighted information than necessary. I love to do this with my level 3s and 4s who we're trying to remove some of this scaffolding for. They're like, oh, I like it when they highlight the sentence for me. I was like, me too. I wish everyone did that for me all the time, but sometimes they ain't gonna. So sometimes I'll tell the teacher, okay, if you have 6 questions and you're doing this strategy, highlight 8 sentences and don't give them numbers. Just give them 8 sentences in the text to look at, and they have to kind of find which one matches the answer they're looking for. See, you gotta trick them a little bit. Cool? All right, the last thing I wanna show you is about supporting essential content vocabulary. This is from, can anyone guess what kind of class this is from? Anyone guess is what I just said? Yeah, American history, good old US history. This is another content example. These are 2 questions from the same teacher, the question I showed you earlier about the bomb. So yeah, I remember that. All right, cool. This is from the same teacher. These are some of these EOC style questions. And this is how, when I was co-teaching with that teacher for my first year of teaching, this is how we annotate these questions. What are some things you observe about this? This is what I would do with content teachers. Say, what do you see on the question? What do we see? Yeah, we simplified automobiles for cars. We simplified standardized. Wait, but standardized, I put it in multiple words. Andrew, why'd you do that? Because there might not be a direct synonym that is in digestible language for the student at that level, right? All right, what else do we see? Yeah, we're underlining important words, right? We're showing that this one is about being less popular. This one is about too expensive, yeah? Reduce choices, yes. That decreases that what? Cognitive load, exactly. Yeah, what did I do by answers A and C on this one? Symbols, we love symbols. Yes, we do. Put some symbols by what words? Decreased and increased to show them that decrease means going down and increase means going up. Yeah, you got it. So this is kind of activity I would do with teachers to show them mine, and then we would go through. Here's another example. This is kind of hard to read. Again, this is also on the website. This is from a geometry teacher, I believe. I don't know math. Someone tell me if I'm wrong. I think this is geometry. I see 2 heads nodding, so we're going to move forward. I think it's geometry. This is one of our math teachers, and she showed us how she would do a standard test question and then her simplified test question for a level 2 English learner, and then she has another one for level 3 and 4 that she would use. So we would observe phenomenon in this too. What do you see about this middle question here? Question, there's a picture. And the picture's of what? A football. See, it's of a football, yes. What did she do on the bottom down here with this last question? Okay, I heard pictures again. I heard word bank. That's a word bank, right? This is a word bank with visuals, right? What else did she do? Instead of just writing on the line, what are the students doing? They're circling, right? They're selecting a response instead of constructing a response. So they're still demonstrating that they know the content, correct? Yeah. After we kind of analyze these, we would go through and do it ourselves. Here's more US history questions. I promise I have other stuff in this normally. I just love US history. Here are some other similar EOC style US history questions that we would annotate as a group. So let's look at this first one together. I'm going to talk to you like I would talk to my content teachers. The purpose of the Marshall Plan was to provide Europe with what? What's the first thing I might do to simplify the vocabulary in that question? Okay, I heard purpose and I heard provide. Those are 2 words we could support, right? What's a synonym I could write for purpose? Goal. Okay, what's a synonym I could write for provide? Give, yeah, all right, we got it. I got a lot of my ESL teachers here who know how to do this. And I'm not gonna ask you to go through the answer choices because we kind of understand what I'm going for here, so yeah? Yeah, all right. So the point of this is to show your teachers how to engage with their content materials and scaffold it in a way that's effective for them, right? A quick way to scaffold. All right, so some things to remember when you are doing vocabulary with your teachers. Again, scaffolds are meant to be, and scaffolds are not. Yeah, you got it. Some items can be modified and some need to be recreated. So that first example I showed you from US history, Did I retype the whole test? No, I did what? Circled and I drew on it, right? The second example from math, did she retype the whole test? Yeah, I mean, she didn't have to retype the whole thing, but she rewrote it to add to it, right? So some things need to be recreated, and some things you can just modify quickly on the fly, 2 days before when you're doing your prep for the day. Pay attention to homonyms and idioms. If you are teaching your teachers how to support vocabulary in their content area, you're going to have to draw their attention to these things, because these are things a lot of our content teachers don't think about. Say, yeah, they don't think about idioms. They don't think about homonyms and homophones and things that confuse our English learners. Yeah. Things you can teach your teachers to play around with are methods of representing vocabulary. So in my example, I showed you synonyms, I showed you a phrase, and then I showed you little symbols, right? Pre-teaching vocabulary. Dr. Tennyson loves vocab. Oh, she loves a vocab foldable, and I am so bad at it, but we're getting better. Pre-teaching vocabulary before a unit will definitely help with this as well, because then if you underline that word, they go, oh, that's code. That means she taught me that word already. I should know that, yeah? And then using text or materials already present to provide vocabulary support. We have a breadth of resources in the state of Tennessee and in a lot of our districts that are accessible for English learners with appropriate scaffolds, correct? Yes. So using text and materials that already have English learner scaffolds built in that draw your attention, your content teacher's attention to some of that vocabulary. All right. I info dumped on you. Is everyone still alive? Okay, good. I heard a lot of yes. Good. All right, I'm going to throw this back to Dr. Tennyson for some deeper dives.
Ooh, he's awesome, isn't he? So I'm going to talk a little bit about research, and I'm actually going to kind of give you some ways that you can speak to your principals, and then also to deeper dive into what students need for language. And then, of course, we know what we know, but do we communicate what we know to our grade level teachers to support them? And so that's kind of what we're going to do. Okay, so anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge PSYOP fan. I have presented before. I think Luke has referenced PSYOP several times. I know I've heard him. We know that PSYOP is good instruction, but let's face it, nobody has time to give your faculty a true PSYOP training. But if you want one, I went over it a couple of years ago. There's some videos on it. Huge fan of John Hattie. Please raise your hand in here if you've heard of Hattie. Okay? Hattie is the best way for you to justify why you are scaffolding to your principals, because they don't care about it unless it says it's data-based. And tomorrow, there's going to be an amazing opportunity for our principals to come and learn some things, and Ariel and Jana are going to present, and they're using a very data-based studies and stuff. So, why John Hattie? Well, Hattie has the effect size, and he is going to teach you how to justify. So I'm going to actually kind of go off script, or not, well, I am actually. All right, so in your references, you have my list of scaffolds that we give, and then the connection that I made, this is a connection I made, to Hattie's effect sizes. If you are not familiar with Hattie, you should know that a 0.4 is considered 1 year's worth of growth, okay? And so if it's a 0.93, how many years worth of growth is that? Over 2, right? Okay, so visuals. I have a shirt that somebody made me from last time I presented that says, visuals speak louder than words. We cannot underestimate a visual. When we do visuals, are you going to make it bigger? Oh, okay. When we do visuals, we can only make it better. And I think visuals are important for every student, not just our ELs. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is a reference for you. So if you're going to your principal, to another teacher, why should I do this? Then you can hand them this, and hopefully your principals know who John Hattie is. I know they do in the city school, because when I worked for Trey Duke, he's the reason I even made this list, was because of his love of this. So did everybody find this? Here's my thing. about anything that we do, because I know that we all steal from each other, and that's what this is a PowerPoint. You can use our PowerPoint however you want to. We just ask that you are a good model of citing your evidence from us, from Sarah, from the ladies that are going to speak this afternoon. Okay, so my big thing is language. Do students know what they're expected to be learning? She mentioned language objectives when we talked about the crosswalk, so this really fits in there. Our high school teachers, our middle school teachers, they know their content really well. He's talked about that. They both reference to the fact that most of our new teachers coming on board, I think at Riverdale, have not come from teacher prep programs. They are coming straight from the workforce, especially as we grow our CTE programs. And so they know their content really well. That area that they have for the most growth is our language objectives. And they need to know how to write a language objective, how to target language, how to do all these things. This presentation is not about that. However, it's about connecting it to that, our research. Teacher clarity is 0.75. Teacher clarity is, it's so many things. He went over a bunch of the parts, the way we speak, making sure that they are sure what they're knowing. And then learning goals versus no learning goals is over a year's worth of growth. If you don't know what your students are learning and they don't know what they're learning, how can they perform on an assessment of any type? Okay, so why we need to teach the linguistic demands of our discipline is important. This is for our grade level teachers, not for us. Are you a content expert in math? I'm going to tell you Andrew is not, because both Andrea and I said that was not geometry, it was algebra. Okay, now I'm picking on him because I can, and he and I have that relationship. But is Andrew's job to be the content area expert? No. Okay, so it's okay. That's not our responsibility. We can have expertise in those areas, and if I want an American history person, I'm going to go to Andrew every time. But that's not what our roles are. Our roles are to support those disciplines and help them understand. And so we have to help them understand how they can't do their job if they don't know the language of their discipline. And how can they convey that information, and how can we teach students to apply that information? Because that's really our goal. Can they apply it? Can they apply it on an EOC? Can they apply it on a job application? Can they apply it? Can they remember it and apply it when they get to college? Can they remember it and apply it when they get to that job? Because we know a lot of our students, our ELs, are not headed for college for lots of different reasons. Okay? That's not that we don't want to push them that way, and it starts in elementary, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to start planting that seed. It can't wait till we get them in high school. I don't know where that came from, but I decided I got it. All right, so I get a little preachy sometimes. Amen. No, just kidding. Helping content experts determine the language needed. So they've got to consider the source of their language use. Are they going to have them read a text? Are they going to have them perform a task? Our agriculture teachers, I don't even know what they're called anymore, our agriculture teachers teach our students how to plant seeds and grow plants, and then they sell them at the end of the year. If they have an English learner in there, that's a task. How are they going to teach them that right language to be able to consider that task? How are they going to talk? How are they going to test? This came directly out of the newest version of the SIOP model. Okay? There is a brand new version. Dr. Katie Topple, if anybody knows who she is, has been added as an author. There is 60% new material in the new SIOP book, and the reason I know this is I just went to the SIOP conference, and it is worth, how many of you have ever had SIOP training or bought an edition of some sort of edition? I highly recommend you investing in some sort of way to get a hold of, ask your Title III people to buy for you. Get a hold of a new SIOP book, because it has a lot of new information in it. I don't know if that's possible for Title III money to be spent that way. Yes? Okay, so because they're going to explain to you deeper and better how to look at language, okay? And so as we look at language, we have to consider what our language use will be. And I'm not going to read these all to you, but my favorite one is, what will students need to understand your speech? If you're giving a lecture, we all lecture, even if we don't lecture the whole time, you are giving information to a student, right? Okay? What language do they need to know to understand your speech? And it's not just what idioms do they need to know, or no, it is the idioms they need to know, not just those content-specific vocabulary. We all teach content-specific vocabulary. We know that's important, but it's what are the other different, deeper types of language? All right, so we're going to revisit this text. We're going to do the same thing he did. Okay, is everybody with me? I love how he does it. Thumbs up, everybody still with me? It's about to be lunchtime. Y'all are ready to be done, yes or no? Okay, so these are the questions that he proposed that students get out of this text. Well, what language are they going to need, not just to understand in the text, and we're not going to do this, but what language would they need in order to read that text and apply it to the task, which in this case is answering questions. We want to go one further. How are the students going to use that language to communicate what they know? Are you going to have them do that turn and talk? Everybody's favorite's turn and talk, right? If you're going to have them do that, what language are you going to do? So you're going to do those things. You're going to read that text. What are those language things? Andrew and I don't do workshops, but when Emily said that, we both looked at each other and go, maybe we should do that. So you could have a workshop with your history teacher, your math teacher. I wouldn't do it all together. I would do it in PLCs or do it per discipline. And I'm using the word discipline, not as in you're not behaving. We all know that, right? Okay. So can you orally share one or two language objectives you could have created? Now share, this can be helpful to all content teachers. We're not going to do this. This is just an example. This will help them write their own language objectives. What Sarah and Andrew and I were both on the committee, Sunitha, Becky, there's lots of people. If you were on that committee and you're here, will you raise your hand? There's a few of us. I thought I saw somebody else. Yes, I was like, I know I saw somebody else. So if we were on that committee, we are not the be-all, end-all. This is just a beginning, right? And they aren't going to have it come August 1st. We all are going back August 1st, right? Yes? Yes? Anybody here going back later? Maybe I'll change jobs. No. We're all going back August 1st, right? So what are we going to do? How many of you all have time already given to you by your principal to talk about your English learners at your school? Raise your hands higher. Are some of y'all from multiple schools? How many of you are going to email your principal this afternoon and say, can I present to my faculty? If you didn't raise your hand, you should be raising your hand. Nobody's going to advocate for your kids but you. I've been in this business almost 24 years, and I'm telling you, sometimes you have to be a little assertive. Now, some of y'all know your administrators better than I do, and you know who will and who will not. But please advocate for yourself, for your students, okay? Let's go back to this. When you present the first week in August, you're presenting the first week in August to teachers? You know, she's asked you to do it. He does it every year. He does a great job, okay? When we present, we need to help them plant that seed, and I'm kind of off base, but so that we can help them understand their language. Because when we do have these workshops, we want them to want to be there, right? Okay, and it all begins with that first one. Okay, background knowledge is so important, right? Holding new language on to what they know, what their prior learning is, and how we can create context for things that don't exist. We all know what soccer is, yes? Okay. What's the most important sport in any high school? American football. Yes, thank you very much. Please put the word American in front of it, okay? All right, so I want my students to enjoy that game, okay? They know how to play soccer, but they don't really have a context for American football, and I want them to do that, right? So we can't always rely on what they know. Sometimes we have to create that context for what they're learning. So if a student has no idea about World War II because they went somewhere else and they didn't talk about it in South America because, you know, it did or didn't affect them, they didn't really learn about it, then you have to create that context on why it was an important event in the history of the world, all right? If you're in Argentina, you should know that how World War II affected the country of Argentina with all the influx of immigrants that they got. All right. We have to help our teachers understand that their context and their language has to be accessed throughout the lesson, all right? Can the students retell it? Can they speak it? Can they discuss it? Our favorite mode in high school still, unless you're a CTE teacher, is often lecture. Raise your hand again. There's not that many high school teachers here. Raise your hands high. Don't be ashamed. If you're a high school teacher, have you walked around your high school lately and walked into other classrooms? Do you even have time to walk into other classrooms? Ask your principal for some time to walk into other classrooms. See what's going on, okay? See how you can support, not what they're doing wrong, how you can support what they're doing in their classrooms, all right? Getting our students to use that language is going to be key for them to even be able to understand that EOC test. And let's face it, what does it matter if it's not an EOC? But are we all tested? Are we all tested?
We're all tested.
Are all tested?
We're all tested.
T-shirt that says that. We do. It's something like that. Okay. So, how do we make those connections? We've gotten our content teachers to understand their language. They've done a lot of the things that Andrew has shared with you. They've gone through. How do they know what needs to be scaffolded? And it's not just your ILP. Obviously, by the way, I'm going to say this because there is a platform that the state is developing that they're rolling out soon. But guess who's going to be taught about it first? Not the teachers who are using it, sorry, no offense, but your titled people, your federal programs directors, your people like that are going to be taught how to use it, and then they're going to teach us how to use it. That being said, I'm sure the state will create opportunities for teachers to eventually learn it. Those are not in stone yet. But here's my thing. Again, is it there yet? Will it be there by August 1st? Who knows? All right? We don't know what access students are going to have. Okay, so whose responsibility is it, does it come down to every time when it comes to your ESL students? Ours. So we've got to be the one that's going to help with this. And what are the things that ways we need to, I can't even say this. What are ways to know, wow, I just realized, okay, ways to know a student. Okay, we didn't catch that. Neither of us caught that. So what are the ways to know a student? Oh, I love that. Where would that go on this list right here? Or their personality, right? What are some other ways for us to know a student? Their parents, okay? What are some other ways for them to know their student? I love that, yes. Going to things they do. Care about the things they care about. If they do play soccer, go to those soccer games at least once. I did not go to soccer games last year, and I should have. We had several of our boys that played. What are some other ways that we can know our students? Looking at their demographics, okay? How many of you understand Spanish at all? I mean, you don't really speak it, but you understand it and you can understand conversations. How many of you all just sit and listen when your students are conversing? And you learn things you never knew, right? Okay? How many of you have friends that will share their friends' stories, not because they're gossiping, but because they care about their friend and they think you need to know something, right? Okay? In high school, we have students that work. They leave school every day and they work till 11 o'clock at night. We know this. I found out a student was sleeping in my class, and I didn't understand whether she was sleeping in my class, and another student said, she didn't get off till 3 o'clock last night. Okay? So sometimes if you're open, and she didn't mind that her friend shared, she was asleep in my class, right? So what do? I'm like, wow, she's here. That's a bonus, right? Okay, so here's my thing. Why is it important to know their story? Sympathy, understand them, to serve the student better. There's two different things, and I don't know what there's a new word. There's triggers. We don't know what might trigger our students either. And then there's the opposite of that, things that make them excited. And there's a word for that, and I just heard it recently, and I don't know what it is. We always tend to stay on the negative. And I'm going to give a little vignette, and I had a student who was living with her aunt and her cousin who was the same age as her. She came to be in my 8th grade classroom. Bright student, never talked, had that long silent period. Somebody's going to talk about that this afternoon. I'll look through that presentation. It's phenomenal. But she was not going to come out of her silent period. I didn't really know why at first. Her cousin was a former student of mine, had exited a couple of years ago. They were all in 8th grade. She wasn't really forthcoming even to our Spanish-speaking EA. We didn't know her story. Her family wasn't sharing her story. I do my family unit. Newcomers, you do your units, right? We all have that lined up. We do it every year. I did my family unit. I started talking about mom and dad. She literally bursts into tears and runs out of the classroom. Okay? I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So my Spanish-speaking EA, who happened to be in the room at the time, goes out, talks to her. We have a break. The bell rings. We go to the whatever. She comes back to me. She said her mom died in childbirth. She used to live with her grandmother. Her grandmother sent her to live with somebody she'd never met in her entire life. Her grandmother and her mother were the ones that raised her, so she lost her grandmother and her mother all in one fell swoop because her grandmother couldn't handle, I'm kind of talking fast, all that sort of stuff. So I learned her story. Next class, family unit's gone. We didn't do it. Okay? Those are the reasons we have to know their story. You're teaching political science, not political science, I can't believe I just said that. You're teaching physical science or you're teaching environmental science. You talk about a flood that happened in India, in whatever. Kid starts crying because their whole family was wiped out during that flood, right? So it's oftentimes that we learn those stories and we have to be, it is not gossip. And I hear this sometimes and I actually think that this is wrong. And I know that whatever. Sometimes we say, it's not my story to tell. I'm telling you, sometimes it is our story to tell. Because we are telling it for the benefit of the student, not to gossip, etc. We have to be selective in the stories we tell. And there are some stories that are not our stories to tell. But if we believe that the story that we know about our student is important, we have to share it. And that is my vignette for today. All right, how to plan a lesson. You've got my go-tos from Hattie. When you're planning a lesson and you use the SIOP model and you're looking for scaffoldings, consider what's going to be your best bang for your buck when you're teaching. I'm going to tell you right now, start with visuals. Always start with visuals. If you're asking your teachers to not do anything else, say, start with visuals. For high school students, if they're literate, the second go-to should always be L1. All right? And Joseph says, I can't always look up all their L1 words. I'm sorry, y'all, let them use their phone. Be cognizant of what they're doing, all right? But let them use their phone. I don't agree with the no phone policies. Okay. So, putting it all together, content, context, language targets, knowledge of your students, you will have a learning outcome eventually. You know, it's not a straight line. I loved Sarah's visual with the spiral. Yes? How many of you? I'd never seen that before. I'm going to steal that, Sarah. I don't know if she's still here. I teach college. When I talk about scaffolding, I'm going to steal that visual. But she references it, so I can do it too. I kind of didn't quite stay on topic, so I apologize for that. I told them I was going to do that. Here's my goal. Here's our goal for this, is how do we support our content teachers? Emily told you how to tie in. Andrew told you some really quick scaffolds. How many of you have shared those scaffolds with teachers before when they said, what do I do on this test, right? We could do a whole deep dive, but we've got to teach our students, which our students are the rest of our faculty, right? Okay? We have to think of our fellow adults sometimes as learners, and we want to give them that growth mindset so that they can learn to do it on their own, okay? We want to create capacity. I can't remember what you said. What did you say? We want to create...
Build confidence and capacity for serving English learners.
We want to build, that's what our responsibilities are. We can't just stay in our classrooms and stay in our holes. And that's an easy comfort zone for us. So, I encourage you right now, while you're on lunch break, no, just kidding. I encourage you, if you feel like your principal is a person that you should go face to face, talk to them so that you can ask, even if it's only for 15 or 20 minutes, to talk to your whole faculty and plant a seed so that they'll come back to you, all right, and then say, I want to give a small after school. But you need to be able to address your whole faculty. Okay? Don't be afraid. Anything else?
I like Don't Be Afraid. That's a good one to go out on.
Okay. So, that was our agenda. Here are our references. And I do have one more plug because I know. But if you're on Twitter, there will be 2 Twitter chats. One is on the new PSYOP. But if you are teaching anybody to the long-term language learner, which is the new term, we know we teach multilingual learners, not ELL students, but experienced multilinguals. I highly recommend this book. If you're like me and you're a reader and you like to read, I cannot, especially if you're teaching LTELs, and they give a lot of what Andrew was saying about the how to modify tests and how to do that stuff. They go into it more depth here. But remember what I said, your principals want the research. They want the references. This is going to be a great reference. Okay? It's Tan Nguyen and Beth Skelton, if you all have ever heard of them. And the foreword is by Jim Cummings. A lot of great stuff in here. And they do talk about backward planning, if anybody knows what that is. Long-term success for experienced multilinguals. I'll leave it up here if anybody wants to look at it. All right, I totally went over time. I told them I was going to do that. Questions? Yeah. Don't make me stand up here.
I have a question for Emily. When you're talking about the scaffolding workshops, if you're just starting this out at your school, what would you recommend? Would you recommend doing this quarterly? Would you recommend doing this like once a semester, once a month? How often did you usually offer it to your teachers?
Great question. As The goal would be every quarter in my mind, although we know that the first 9 weeks of school is insane. And so I have this very ferocious protection of my content area teachers and the things that they are asked to do. And so I want to be really cognizant of the timeline of the school year. I probably wouldn't bring it up until after fall break. However, I do think doing very content area specific, so having a scaffolding workshop for U.S. history team could be useful, and you could kind of have a regular meeting time with them. Yeah.
Hello, for our elementary teachers, would you suggest maybe having this during like grade level meetings versus PLCs once a month or something like that? Just curious.
I would definitely, I know that the setup in elementary and middle schools are a little bit different. I would definitely say that a lot of these things can be applied to the grade level meetings. I do think PLCs, at least in our district, PLCs are meant for a very specific set of goals, analyzing data and whatnot. And so getting your airtime or your screen time during those PLCs might be a little bit challenging. And so grade level meetings or department meetings might be your best bet in terms of getting a little bit more time to go over some of these ideas.
I can piggyback off that for a second. Another thought is a lot of times in our experience, at least at high school, and again, I don't know how grade level or elementary PLCs function. A lot of times what we found to be more effective with using this time with PLCs is making yourself available as a resource. Like Emily showed her email at the beginning of the year, we do something similar at Riverdale where it's like, this is your ESL teacher for your PLC. Having your ESL teacher for that PLC reach out to them intentionally about setting times for them to come to PLCs, so you're just not popping in while they're trying to plan a CFA. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if you're making yourself available as a resource and reminding them that you're there, your PLC leads and your department heads are going to reach out to you and go, oh, in 2 weeks, I know we're going to be working on this for the CFA. Can you come to that one? Do you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be as, obviously, having quarterly those scaffolding sessions are incredible. But making yourself available as a resource, and not just once in August, because Emily said August is crazy, being there for them all the time is going to go a lot further. You know what I'm saying? Cool.
I would say I attended a PLC and helped them scaffold the first 2 tests. And then after that, one of the teachers goes, I love your model. I can use this and I can do it on my own. And that's really what our goal is, not for us to have to do all the work.
Yes.
Right. The art of scaffolding.
Yes.
Right.
You're scaffolding the scaffolds.
I just want to say you guys did a terrific presentation. I feel like as ESL teachers, we are having to come out of that comfort zone because there are so many changes coming down with the WIDA standards. We have the crosswalk coming out eventually. We have the different work that's going to be coming along with the other content areas. I feel like, to go back to her question she was asking for the elementary age, you really have to take into consideration your teachers and your school. We are going to start, for my district, start doing professional development with some of the scaffolding. We're going to start like per semester, just to ease it in, because I want my teachers to see that, okay, what you're presenting to me is beneficial for my students and to me and our scores. And that way, if later on, we can probably do every 9 weeks if that's needed. Something else I was going to say about your presentation is that there has been a gap in, I guess, ESL teachers, or just getting information and saying, okay, here are your sentence stems, here are your scaffolds and everything like that. But we haven't been given the opportunity to break it down and actually model to them how to do that. So I feel like as a state, as we're growing for our ELs and we're growing professionally, that we have to come out of our safety zone and stand up, and we have to show our teachers how to do this effectively, not just for us, but for our students. So great job.
So Dr. Tennyson and Ms. Davis and Mr. Rainey, fabulous, thank you. This is a great presentation. It's so valuable to hear those who are doing the work give ideas on how to do the work. And so thank you to all of you.